measures and ride upkeep. But even the best can find itself standing upon blood-soaked dirt. Beneath the boisterous laughter that fills your favorite parks, if you listen close enough, are the echoes of horrific and deadly accidents. We're about to take you on an unforgettable ride through the tunnel of horrors. But are the stories we're about to tell real? Or are we just sending you through a winding loop of deception? Can you decide what's fact or fiction?
The line that divides the factual from the unreal has long since blurred. The tales we once thought fantastical, now implanted as true. To decipher verity from the imagined, you must break from the ordinary and consider a universe where the outlandish prevails. Can you expand your mind to see beyond our perceived reality? Can you decide what's fact or fiction?
Matt Lesotho considered himself a certifiable jokester. Many thought it was a means of covering insecurities, and sometimes his pranks, tricks, and jokes did go a little too far. During a warm summer night at a local carnival, Matt was feeling particularly mischievous.
As Bill listened to Matt explain why he wasn't going to go through the carnival's haunted house, he knew immediately that something was up. The class clown wasn't one to be deterred by much, and a few cheesy animatronics and funhouse lighting certainly wasn't going to do the trick. Still, he went along with it, trying to gauge whether Tracy was also falling for whatever shenanigans awaited. They let Matt play his game and went into the ride together. Even as the cart slowly started to chug along the rickety track, Bill could hear Matt talking to others waiting in line about how scary the ride was. He was really trying to sell the gag. "What do you think he has planned?" Bill queried Tracy as the cart entered the darkened house. "I'm sure he'll pop out in a mask or something stupid." Her attitude was dry and clearly unenthusiastic of her friend's antics. The two waited, expecting Matt to pop out of every sharp turn they passed. They passed by dozens of rubber bats and matted monsters as the cart creaked its way towards a neon glow ahead. The closer they got to the room, the cart started to pick up speed until there was a slight wind blowing against them. They broke through the curtain and were met with a psychedelic mess of colors. Clown laughter filled the room, and automated figures lunged lazily from hidden crevices. Just when Billy thought the trippy color scheme and increased speed would make him sick, he saw it. A shadow moved against the orange wall at the far end of the room. The closer they got to it, the more the shadow started to take a familiar shape. Billy could make out the idiotic smirk on Matt's face before he leapt from the shadows. He could also clearly make out the moment that smile turned into a worried frown. Matt had misjudged his first step and tripped over rigging on the floor, and with little space between him and the track, he instantly knew what that error would cost him. His intention was to terrify his friends, and as his body slammed into the front of the cart, they received quite the fright. Though the cart eventually stopped, it had dragged Matt's body along the metal track, leaving a bloody mess.
We've all heard the old adage, boys will be boys. So is Matt's gag gone wrong really that shocking of a tale? Of course, Matt may not even exist, and this could be a story pulled straight from our imaginations. Comment with what you think really happened. While you share what you think, we have another tragic tale to tell. that of 17-year-old Donna Merkel and the Land of Adventure. It was meant to be a summer job, something to hold her over until school started again. When the school year began, however, Donna was nowhere to be found, and the Land of Adventure was never the same again.
Donna was probably more excited than she should have been. She'd heard many people complain about working at Land of Adventure, but ever since she went when she was 12, she had wanted to spend at least one summer employed in the magical kingdom of rides and attractions. The moment she was old enough, she applied, and within hours received the good news. They weren't known to turn down prospective employees, but when she hung up the phone, she couldn't help but feel elated. During orientation, she expressed interest in working at the park's most interactive attraction, a musical journey through a land of awe and wonder featuring lifelike animal animatronics. She remembered how much fun the host had 5 years prior and loved the thought of having to work the crowd and react to her robotic co-stars the same way. Her first few shows went off better than she expected. The crowd loved her bubbly personality and, despite having seen the show from the audience perspective nearly a dozen times, it still brought her great joy each time. As the night went on, Donna felt her enthusiasm wane as the need for a break pestered her. With no one to stand in for her, she didn't want to cause issues for management and simply pressed on. By her 10th show of the day, she was exhausted and started to get sloppy. One of her favorite things about the attraction was how the stage rotated to change the scene, giving the audience something new to gawk at. She knew where to stand to keep clear of the gap between the rotating wall and the stationary wall. But during the second-to-last show of the night, the aches of her body distracted her too much. Many audience members thought the horrific screams of Donna being crushed to death were part of a different attraction, but those that knew better ran for help. Sadly, it was too late to save the young woman.
Donna seemed to know everything about the attraction, so wouldn't it seem like she'd have prior knowledge and training of the rotating walls? Or perhaps it was an act of carelessness. Or maybe this is just another tale spun up by our writers. Let us know in the comments below. But before we get to a reveal, we have a question for you. How much do you love your clothing? Enough to say, jump in front of a speeding train to try and retrieve it? 13-year-old John L. Piper may not have met the business end of a train, but his actions showed that little would keep him from retrieving his favorite hat. On a crisp autumn day, however, he learned the price of his persistence.
Why did you even bring it, Jay? They told you you'd lose that stupid thing on one of the rides. Janelle could hear his sisters nagging behind him, but he was too focused on the prize ahead to care. If he didn't act quickly, his fun day was about to turn tragic, and his most beloved article of clothing would be lost forever. During his ride on the Stinger, he had failed to heed his parents' warning to hold on to his favorite baseball cap tightly. Through an intense loop, he lost himself in the moment and let it slip from his hand. There wasn't much sentimental value to the hat, but over the years it had become part of his image. And when you're budding into a teenager, we all know how important that can be. While his sister continued to verbally prod him, Janelle's eyes scanned the restricted area of the park, a quartered-off section not far from the loop. After minutes of scanning, he saw it wedged between two beams. It wasn't too high off the ground, and if he moved quickly, he could definitely rescue it. "Don't you dare, Jay," that persistently annoying voice warned him. "You're going to get us thrown out. Just wait for Mom and Dad." As he had been doing for the past few minutes, Janelle continued to ignore his sister, and once the roller coaster passed by, he made a break for it. The fence was easy to scale, and nobody seemed to even notice him trotting through the restricted area. He felt like he got to his hat in record time, the adrenaline coursing through his veins, fueling his burst of energy. Before retrieving it, he goaded his sister from afar, flipping her off as she frantically waved him down. She looked to be in a panic, less concerned about getting thrown out and more worried about something Jonelle hadn't realized. He strained to hear her, but his ears filled with an unmistakable, deafening noise. The oncoming cart hit him at such a speed that, even if his head hadn't been severed, the trauma would have been impossible to survive.
Poor Jonelle learned the hard way that there's no personal item worth losing your head over. Do you think the patrons of that amusement park were treated to a grisly sight that day? Or are we sending you for another loop? Discuss your thoughts in the comments section below. And hold on to your hats. It's time for the reveal.
Are you ready to find out if you can decipher between fact or fiction? Let's look back at tonight's 3 stories and find out which were born from reality and which were fabrications of the imagination.
Matt Lasotto's tragic end to his playful prank may have been gruesome, but was it real? If you said yes, thankfully, you're wrong. While it's not unfathomable that someone could sneak into one of those pop-up haunted house rides, this story comes straight from our imagination. Do you recall our second story, that of anxious Donna Merkel, who was crushed to death on her first night of work? Clearly, that's far too grim to have actually happened, right? Wrong. This tragic story was inspired by the death of Deborah Gale Stone. On July 8, 1974, Stone was working as a hostess at Disneyland's America Sings attraction when she became caught between a rotating and stationary wall. A patron in a nearby theater heard the hostess's screams just before she was crushed to death. Now that we've ruined the happiest place on earth for you, let's look at our third story of young Jonelle Piper. Could a kid love a hat so much that he'd risk personal safety to retrieve it? If you think so, then clearly you know a thing or two about how children think. The story is based on a 2008 incident in which 17-year-old Asia Leishaw Ferguson jumped a fence in Six Flags over Georgia to retrieve a hat he'd lost while riding the Batman roller coaster. Ferguson was struck by the coaster and decapitated.
How well did you do in tonight's video? Did you look past the deception of our world and define the off-blurred line that struggles to separate lies from the truth? Let us know in the comment section below. And should you find the urge to test your perceptions again, be sure to subscribe and join us next time when we ask you to decide what's fact or fiction.